Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. The Chabahar port in Iran suddenly is supposed to be one of the most important offshore destinations for India as far as India's connect to the Central Asia and, of course, Europe, Russia is concerned. India has been at it with this port for a long time, and there are some results that we can see with the current movement of grain into Afghanistan. Let's learn a little more about the importance of this port. How did it come India's way? That's the most important thing. And of course, future prospects. For that, I have with me Mr. Ravi Joshi. Sir, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
So, firstly, tell us, how did the idea of Chabar kind of just come up, firstly, because you got to have really a long term strategic vision for something like this to come out. So, what was the vision there?
Yes, Chabahar port was offered to India by President Mohammad Khatami of Iran when he came on an official visit to India in January 2003 at the invitation of Prime Minister Vajpayee. He was invited to be the chief guest at our Republic Day function, which is a big thing, and he came with a very high level delegation consisting of his defense minister, his oil and gas minister, his finance minister, and foreign minister. So a lot of agreements were signed, and there was a lot of hype and expectations and hope that Iran, India will now reach a strategic partnership, etc., etc. Okay, at that time, Khatami made an announcement that we were ready to offer Chabahar port to India for joint collaboration and joint development. So that was a very big thing because, as you know, the Gwadar port in Pakistan was already being developed by China as part of its CPEC, China Pakistan Economic Corridor. And that economic corridor ends in Gwadar. That gives China an access to the, the Straits of Hormuz and then to the Persian Gulf. So, which is a very important strategic port for China. So, getting Chabahar was an important strategic advantage for us because we were going to build a port just about 72 kilometers away from Gwadar. And as the crow flies, it will be less than half an hour because Gwadar is in the Chabahar is in the Sistan Balochistan province of Iran, and it is adjacent to the Balochistan province of Pakistan. There are Baloch people on this side of the border as well as on that side of the border. And they are the only Sunni community in a Shia dominated Iran. Okay, so this makes it a very interesting demographic mix. And because it is Sunni dominated, Iran has been traditionally ignoring developing that region. But then the thought here is a good opportunity if we can offer it to India and we can jointly develop Chabahar and the surrounding areas. So it was going to be a win-win situation for both Iran and India. Now, Prime Minister Vajpayee immediately accepted the offer, and we started mulling over how to go about it and all that. So, and there are two ports in Chabahar, which are known as the Shahid Behesti berth and the Shahid Kalantari port. Both of them were offered to India for development. Now, there was a bit of a catch in this because you had to go and dredge those berths, both the berths, and make it amenable for heavy tonnage ships to be berthed in that port. Heavy tonnage, by heavy tonnage I mean anything more than 250,000 tons. So there was no possibility of anything bigger than that going into that area and berthing. So we had a lot of work to do. It involved a couple of $100 million, okay, the initial cost. And then if we take it up, Iran said we will declare the entire zone as a special economic zone and we will give you plenty of opportunities. It will be tax free. It will not have no local rules applicable to it. It will be completely in Indian hands, and you can build a container terminal, a dry port, and all that. And they even granted us 50 acres of land. So And then we thought, and then we had to build a railway line from Chabahar to the Afghan border. That is to connect it to the Delaram Jarans road, which India had built in Afghanistan. So we had to build a railway line from Chabahar to a place called Milak in Afghanistan, and from there the trains would go to Jarans, Delaram. So that would connect us to Afghanistan. The main point of Chabahar was actually to get access to Afghanistan. At that time, if you remember, that time Afghanistan was being ruled by, I think, post Karzai, it was Ashraf Ghani, or and it was basically this man Karzai and Ghani. That is that period. So Pakistan was playing very, very hard with India because it was not allowing India to trade with Afghanistan through its Karachi port. Karachi port was the main access for sending any large shipments to Afghanistan. And that time, if you remember, Pakistan, under the under the leadership of Imran Khan, who was very close to Taliban at that time in Pakistan, he even stopped the shipment of goods and supplies to the American troops in Afghanistan. Due to which George Bush had to request President Putin to allow him to use the Russian airspace, and also train facilities. So, and Putin very readily agreed, and it was a great offer. And things started moving from Europe to Moscow, and from Moscow to Kazakhstan and Central Asian republics like Tajikistan, and from Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, it would go to Afghanistan. So it was a very complicated route, but US had to use it because of blockade in the Karachi port to Afghanistan. And we even had such a funny problem that when we had to send a container load of biscuits for Afghan children through the Wagah border, Pakistan refused. So they were so petty at that time. So we had even we told and Pakistan said you have to use our trucks, and then it will go all the way to Afghanistan and all that kind of nonsense. So that container simply got stuck. So that was the real situation of problem for us. So now Chabahar came as a great windfall opportunity. Unfortunately, as it happens in the Indian bureaucracy, nothing moved for almost 10 years. And suddenly, in the last few months of Dr. Manmohan Singh's government in 2013, January or March, the government of Dr. Manmohan Singh announced $115 million aid for the development of Chabahar Port. Now, let me tell you the background of this, how it came about. I was in the RAW at that time, and I was handling Iran, among other countries. And our ambassador in Iran, a very dynamic young man who was very, forcefully pushing for this agreement, for doing something about Chabahar. He used to constantly write to MEA and said, "Please do this." And then he would send me a copy, and he said, "You please chase it with the JS and the MEA and do something." Finally, a cabinet proposal went to the government from the MEA side. The MES had problem because they said if the cabinet proposal is agreed, they will ask MEA to fund the whole damn thing, and we don't have the funds. Anyway, finally the cabinet proposal was agreed, and Chidambaram, who was the finance minister at that time, he put in a clause saying that what is the revenue, the return on investments, ROI, okay, revenue earnings. And he told the MEA after 3 years, please give us an account as to how much revenue has been earned. Now, the whole idea was this was not a commercial project. This was a strategic project. This was there's not going to be revenue earning in this. It is going to be downhill all the way, and you have to pour money in order to get access to such an important place right on the Gulf of Oman, which gives you access to the Persian Gulf. And you are there. I mean, you can use it later on for anything. You can use it for defense purpose, commercial purpose, all that. So that is how a budgetary grant of $115 million was sanctioned for this project. Uh, Later again, that money was not utilized, and Arun Jaitley, when he was finance minister in the PM Modi's government, he announced a different, similar, with the same number, he juggled around and he said, we will give $85 million for construction of the port, dredging of the berths, etc., and $25 million we will keep aside as revenue expenditure. Now, one good thing that he did was to remove the revenue earnings, and he accepted revenue expenditure. There will be revenue expenditure of $25 million every year. So with this, we went ahead. Then we had a very ambitious project. We wanted to build a railway line from all the way from Chabahar to Afghan border. So we had meetings in the Ministry of Transport, and the railway secretary, railway chairman of the railway board, and various other secretaries from MEA, and we were there. And he dropped a bombshell. He said it is going to cost us $1 million per kilometer. Okay, and the distance to be covered is about 885 kilometers. So, which is going to cost $1 billion. And everybody in the meeting room knew that this is not going to work. Because nobody in the Indian government was going to offer $1 billion. Okay. So this was practically a dead proposal, dead on arrival kind of thing. So the construction of the railway line was given up. Now this is 2013. Okay, 2013, 2004. Yeah, 2000. Yeah, 2012, 2013. I was there. Then for a few more years, nothing happened. Meanwhile, Iran went ahead and built a 4-lane road all the way from Chabahar to Afghan border. But then we said, okay, this is fine. We can truck it all the way instead of sending it by, railway containers. And the railways had a very important point. They said, unless there is 2 million tons of cargo every month, it will not be viable for the railways to have a railway line. And there's not going to be 2 million tons of cargo for the next 10 years. Okay, and by the way, and in the same year, 2013, Afghanistan, I think it was under Karzai's government, they offered India the Haji Gag project, that is for iron ore. Okay, this was it's a kind of a jewel in the crown, as the Wall Street Journal put it. This was one of the best mines that Afghanistan had, and the iron ore was enormous, and it was a great mining opportunity. And immediately, Steel Authority of India, along with about 7 other private companies, bid for it, and they said that we will put in the money. That was also initially it had to put in something like $4 billion to start the work on the mine. Okay, so if and when we start getting the iron ore out of Afghanistan, then we thought a railway line would be very viable. Okay, so there it was when I left the department. But here there are some more interesting things I would like to tell you. See, we made it because we got the Haji Gag iron ore project. We made it a trilateral agreement: India, Iran, Afghanistan. So, and in one of the meetings in the foreign ministry, it was decided, okay, the foreign secretary said, because it's a trilateral project, let's ask Afghanistan also to put in some money. And I said, sir, Afghanistan is practically begging every country right now for donors, aid, and asking Afghanistan to put in money would be rather cruel. It's not going to happen. And around the same time, 2012, I think Prime Minister Manmohan Singh announced shipment of 1 lakh tons of wheat to Afghanistan. Because Afghanistan was in desperate need of wheat, and India announced 1 lakh tons of shipment of wheat. This was a great, very generous offer, but shipping it all the way to Afghanistan was a logistical nightmare. There are no ships going from Bombay to Chabahar, and no major ships. So the Ministry of External Affairs requested the Ministry of Shipping, please send at least 20,000 or 30,000 tons as a trial shipment through the Chabahar port, and let's see how much it's going to work out. How many days will it take out? So the Ministry of Transport came back to ABA and said, "Sir, we will do the trial run, but you have to bear the cost." And there again, the ABA backed out. And they said, "We don't have the funds for that." So this is the situation. In reality, what happens in the government departments? Okay, the government announces major initiatives like this, mega initiatives, and then it gets stuck in the when it comes down to action level, because various ministries have various constraints and particularly budget requirements, and and you have to again go afresh to Ministry of Finance, saying that please give us money for shipping this and all that. So I think we managed to ship only some trial shipment of 20,000 or 30,000 tons. And I really don't know whether we got all the 1 lakh tons into Afghanistan or not. But we tried, the experiment went on. And then and then in 2016, Modi government announced major investments in Iran. Okay, Acha, by the way, I must bring in one more factor here, the America factor. America had been consistently putting sanctions on Iran for its so-called nuclear program, okay, which it had been repeatedly denying that they have no nuclear ambitions, they only need nuclear power for civil purposes, for power generation, etc., etc. But Americans never believed it because the Israelis and the Saudi Arabians never believed it. They were scared that if and when Iran goes nuclear, it will completely destabilize the region. It's a different matter that Israel has got nuclear weapons, but that doesn't destabilize the region. But you can't, a Muslim country cannot have nuclear weapon. It's bad enough that Pakistan has a nuclear weapon. So they don't want another Muslim country to have a nuclear weapon. So that is the reality of the situation in that region. And America is the only guarantor to see that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. So America was putting heavy sanctions. And the sanctions they've been putting for the last 2, 3 decades, right from the time that Iranian Revolution in 1979, and when they soon after the revolution they completely seized the American embassy and put all the 53 American diplomats and staff into a kind of a confinement area for more than a year. So since then, Iran's relations with America have completely soured, and there was an uptick in the relationships only when President Obama came to power. That was 2008 to 2012. And he had a two-year term, two tenures. So it is 2008, 2012, and 2012, 2016. So in the I think in the 2000, yeah, in the second term of Obama, he started making some very positive gestures towards Iran and said that let us sort out this nuclear issue. And he along with 5 other European powers, signed an agreement called JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Okay, this was signed with Iranian Foreign Minister, and the U.S. Foreign Secretary, and UK, France, Germany, and Russia and China. So U.S. and 5 other countries signed this JCPOA agreement, which said that Iran will place its nuclear reactors under IAEA monitoring. It will be closely monitored by the IAEA, and IAEA will and whatever it has any amount of uranium refined over and above 5% will be handed over to a third party like Turkey. So Iran agreed to that, and Iran started putting its nuclear reactors, excepting one nuclear reactor, which was a research facility. And they put all the nuclear reactors under the IAEA. And then President Obama gradually relaxed the sanctions against Iran. And at that time, when President Obama relaxed the sanctions, our oil intake from Iran, you must remember that our major relationship with Iran is based on our oil import. And Iran was the second largest exporter of oil to India from that region. The first, of course, was Iraq, and then Iran, and then Saudi Arabia. These were Saudi Arabia and UAE fourth. So these were the group of nations who were supplying oil to India. And we used to import, at the peak of our imports, we used to import about uh, $12 billion worth of oil every year, which is like $1 billion a month. So it was roughly about 14 million tons of oil every year we used to import from Iran. That was the peak of our relationship. And then uh, suddenly, President Obama goes and President Trump comes to power. And then that is the same time, it coincides with Prime Minister Modi coming to power in India. So actually, that was Modi's second term. So and when President Trump comes to power, he tears up Obama's agreement with Iran. He said this is all nonsense, and we have been cheated by Iran, and Iran is particularly he said Iran is going on producing missiles. That was not a part of the JCPOA. Missile program of Iran was never a part of JCPOA. And now to say Iran is producing missiles, so I don't agree with JCPOA, was absolute nonsense. And it came as a shock to all the other countries who are signatories. You must remember, this is not a bilateral agreement between US and Iran. It is a multilateral agreement with UK, France, Russia, and China, and Germany also signing on to the agreement. So they were shocked. And they said, we will continue our part of the deal. But they had problems. You cannot send money to Iran. You cannot get money from Iran because the dollar window is closed. And India used to operate through something called Asian Clearing Union. We used to send money to Iran through that, and that also came under sanctions, and they forced the Asian Clearing Union to be shut down. And then, no, I will only confine to India Iran because that is the meat of the discussion here today. So when we were part of the negotiating team, I was part of the deputy NSA and their deputy NSA. We were about three or four officers. We used to meet the Iranian delegation, and they would repeatedly tell us this is a commercial relation between two independent sovereign countries. And how can a third party come and tell you that you can't buy particular goods from a country and now you can't pay for that goods? I mean, this is absurd. You can't accept this. And we said, yes, we know the difficulty. We will try to sort it out. We will pay you with some other means and all that. So we came up with a solution that we will pay 20, 20, 40%, like that, 20% in dollars, 20% in euros, and 40% we'll pay the third countries with which Iran is doing business. Okay, so this is the kind of agreement we came up with. And then another remaining 20% we'll keep in a account separately, which they will have access to later on when the sanctions are lifted. So we came up with this. And then that money had to go through a German, a Hulk bank, which is a Turkish bank based in Germany, used to send our money to Iran. And the Americans got scent of this, and they started putting sanctions on Turkey to close down its branch in Germany. So after about a few months, we realized that Hulk Bank is not accepting payments. They said that you have to find other means. Then we told the Iranians, okay, let us look at payments through Dubai, okay, Dubai or Hong Kong or Singapore or something like that. They said, okay, we'll accept any bank in Dubai. So we tried making payments through some banks in Dubai. And that also, there's a financial unit under American Secretary of State, which monitors these transactions. So they put pressure on Dubai, which is much, much easier than Germany. So that channel also closed. And we had to pay in billions of dollars. So finally, we had to request Turkey to buy gold bonds, solid gold, biscuits, bars. And we told Turkey, we will pay you. You buy gold bars and hand it over to Iran. Turkey, Iran share a border. So that system went on for a while. And then suddenly the American the sleuths who are sitting in Turkey found that the gold prices is skyrocketing in Turkey. Gold is not available in Turkey. So they found what the hell is happening, and they said, "Oh my God, this is India is involved in this. India is sending money to Turkey, and Turkey is buying gold and sending it to Iran." So this was the kind of arrangement we had to get it all kinds. We had to devise all kinds of methods of payment. Now that is as far as oil trade is concerned. But on the Chabahar front, practically we had to close down our investments and whatever projects we had in mind because of American sanctions. Now, when Prime Minister Modi went in 2016, um, he we announced a major $8 billion worth of investments, and Iran even offered us one gas field in Iran to India for development. It was called Farzan B or gas fields or something. That was offered even earlier than 2016, but major movements happened in acquiring that gas field. Okay, and this $8 billion announcement was made, but now I have no. And Trump at that time gave exemptions to India on two issues. One is you go ahead with your Chabahar port, and even you go ahead with your Iran-Pakistan pipeline, Iran-Pakistan-India gas pipeline. This was a big thing at that time. There are two gas pipelines we were talking about, IPI and TAPI. TAPI is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. So these pipelines were being discussed, and Dharmendra Pradhan, who was our Minister for Gas and Oil, used to very often visit both the countries and make announcements that okay, we are putting money here, we are constructing the pipeline, etc. Now all that has gone into deep freeze. Now, for the last couple of years, I have not been hearing anything about it. In fact, India went out on the gas pipeline, Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline, quite early in the game. I think by about 2012, we were out of it because we realized the difficulty in Balochistan. Balochistan, there was a lot of insurgency against Pakistan government. The Baluchs were having their own fights, waging a struggle for independence. So it became a very difficult situation. So that was given up. And TAPI also practically given up was because the Taliban insurgency gained ground in Afghanistan, and it practically and now that from 2021 when Americans left Afghanistan and Taliban is in full control, there's practically no movement on either front, either Iran Chabahar pipe project, shipping and railway track project, or in our gas and oil investments. I don't see much happening on that because everything has frozen, has become very slow, and there's a delay in any completion of any conclusion to the projects. And yeah, so I think this is the present state of the game, state of the play. So let's see if it picks up again because once and when Taliban was out of power, we both Iran and India were actively supporting one group in Afghanistan. That is the group of led by Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Tajiks. They were very close to Iran, and we supported them. And so the Taliban has not liked India, Iran for that count, and they will not allow Iran to actively come into Taliban controlled Afghanistan. So there is a lot of history, bad blood, and you know mistrust in the region, complicated by wars and Islamic fundamentalist regimes coming into the situation. So, though our relationship with Iran is quite warm, uh, I don't think any significant progress has happened either in dredging the berths and making it viable for large ships to go. And of course, another thing which was dependent upon Chabahar Port was the INSTC. INSTC is the International North-South Trade Corridor. Okay, we were planning that from Chabahar, we'll build a connectivity through the existing railway line of Iran to Tehran and to Baku and to Moscow, through Iran, Azerbaijan, Russia, all the way up to Moscow, and then probably up to St. Petersburg if required. So this railway line was being thought about, and a lot of administrative difficulties were sorted out, like visas, like shipping paper interoperability, making them accessible to all the three, four countries. All that preliminary work happened, but now I don't, now that there's a war in Ukraine, actually, Russia tried to send oil through this, not oil, they tried to send some shipments, and it proved that it is about $2,500 less for a 15-ton cargo, which is significant. Okay, almost like 30% less cost. And also, time saved is about half. This route from Moscow to Baku to Tehran to Chabahar to India, Bombay, was going to be about 14 days compared to coming via the Mediterranean and the Suez Canal, which is about 32 days. So this is definitely a very economical project if it works out. But now that Russia is neck deep involved in its own problems with Ukraine, there's not been much progress for the last 1 year or more. So this is the present state of play.
Interesting stories, and especially when the personal aspect of it is very, very interesting. I mean, there are of course spoil sports in the entire game, internally and externally. That's how the ball bounces, I guess, in India. But one thing I want to ask you, sir, the recent, as you mentioned, North-South testing that was done, and about I think 6-8 months ago, again there was a testing that was done. But the main thing is India has been sending wheat through that port to Afghanistan currently. I think the recent shipment was about 20,000 tons that went across. What does that signal to you, sir?
Well, first and foremost, we are trying to give Afghanistan a separate access to the seas. You know, if Pakistan plays very hard with Afghanistan, which it did as long as Karzai and Ghani were ruling the country, Pakistan was definitely not cooperative. And as it is now more cooperative with the Taliban government, Pakistan oftentimes controlled or regulated Afghan movements through the Karachi port. And there has always been problem between Pakistan and Afghanistan on even goods coming from Karachi port. The Pakistani contractors have been saying that you have to use our trucks. Okay, that's all right. From Karachi to Afghan border, they will use Pakistani trucks. But after that, Afghanistan should be allowed to use its own trucks. And the army has its own agencies. That is a problem. The Pakistan army has its own transportation network. And they say that you should use our trucks. It's a big racket. In Afghanistan, Pakistan army plays a huge role. It was getting drugs out of Afghanistan and sending it all over the world. And that's very well known. And so many generals have made millions of dollars, and with the involvement of Americans in that. Even the Americans were in Afghanistan. The Pakistan army generals were hands in glove with American generals. And I have heard from very reliable Russian leaders, Russian senators, telling me that planes have taken off from the American base in Afghanistan and have flown directly to what is it, Latvia, Lithuania, Latvia, those countries. From there, they just go by road into Europe, and it's all drugs going by American military aircraft. So this is hearsay. Okay, don't you can't believe it, but this is what the Russians have been telling.
No, they're quite capable of it. So they've done this before. So what they did in Vietnam for raising CIA funds and all that stuff is well known. So
Yeah.
well known and actually duly acknowledged by the Americans themselves. So I guess there's a quite a possibility in that aspect of it. It's a messy world out there, sir. But I hope this. I actually, when you mentioned the Russia-Ukraine war, it also provides for an opportunity for a gap in terms of the due attention paid over this side. But something also tells me that there is the Iran would go through certain amount of turmoil in the future. I mean, I can't prove it, but let's just say a little birdie tells me so. So my last request for a comment for this particular dialogue would be that what do you think would be the future of Iran in the next couple of years? Is there some action that could be happening in that area? There is a whole lot
You
of.
know, yeah, since Joe Biden has come to power, he has tried to undo some of the excessive damages which Trump did. Okay, and he has been saying that we could go back to JCPOA in a gradual manner, with more assurances coming from Iran, etc. Now, you must remember that Trump tore up the JCPOA when the IAEA, which is the only mandated body to certify Iran's nuclear status, was giving continuously clean chits to Iran. Iran was in compliance with the IAEA regulations as far as the JCPOA wanted it. Iran was never at fault, and IAEA certified that it is completely fulfilling our requirements. Still, Trump tore it down because he was only listening to his buddies in Tel Aviv and Riyadh, and they were telling him that Iran is Satan, and you have to cut the head of the devil, etc. That kind of a language they were talking. So Iran became an enemy for him because it was an enemy for Israel and Saudi Arabia. Now that Iran and Saudi Arabia have become friends with the help of China, the situation is very different. And in fact, Joe Biden has lost an opportunity in doing what China did. And China has gained immensely in this region. Has, it's gone miles ahead. you know and this was the biggest contradiction in the region, the contradiction between Iran and Saudi Arabia, or the fault line, that the conflict, and that fueled the war in Yemen, and that fueled the trouble in Syria, and the trouble in Iraq is basically Iran and Saudi Arabia fighting proxy. And again in Syria, it was Saudi Arabia and Iran fighting in proxy. And Yemen, of course, the Houthi rebels were actively supported by Iran. So major conflicts were happening there because of differences between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And now that the two countries are talking to each other and have opened embassies, and now even the trade ministers have gone and visited each other, and there's going to be a significant change in the region. Let's see what happens. I mean, whether US is now catching up with this or not, it will be left to US. Whether the JCPOA agreement is intact as far as other five countries are concerned. Okay, and Biden is not the kind of guy who will tell India you don't import oil from Iran. He cannot, because America has lost its predominant role in the region. And though we have not, I don't think we have gone back to $14 billion worth or $12 billion worth of trade in oil. We have upped our imports from Iran. And Iraq is number one, Iran is Saudi Arabia is number two, and Iran is number three. So things are improving. Let's hope and wait and see.
I guess the risk of that was taken with regards to Russian oil would strengthen us a little bit, and let's hope things actually just do move forward. Because one of the things that you mentioned, which is very interesting, that the Americans have lost the kind of dominance that they had within the place with regards to pushing countries within a certain place. So I guess that thing is broken. That should kind of change a whole lot of things. Let's
Yes,
hope for the best. Absolutely.
yes, yes, yes.
So thank you so much. This was a beautiful insight into Chabahar and the India-Iran relations, because uh, what we hear is a lot of rhetoric. What we hear is this thing, and but also I really appreciate you to help us understand the back end of these kind of relations, because there's a lot that happens at the back end. Budgetary
Yeah.
issues, of course, do play a constraint. There is no question, and sometimes it's just plain simple bureaucracy, and that's something that I guess is one of the biggest challenges in India. I'd like to thank you for this one, sir. And of course, to all the viewers, we're going to be continuing on with the episodes on the history and the deep-blooded history of the Middle East or the West Asia. In the next episode, we will be talking about the First World War. So, thank you so much. Till the next time, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you.